Hey folks, Multi here, and it has been quite a while since I last spoke in front of this camera. Apparently my last vlog was the 14th of March last year, so almost 1 year ago, basically, at this point. There are actually a myriad of reasons why I haven't, made videos, basically, for the past year. And there's one reason that stands above the rest, but it was a whole lot of factors essentially that came together. So 2 days after I made that last vlog where I showed off my PS3 collection, on the 16th of March, I started playing VRChat. For those of you who are not aware, VRChat is a social virtual platform of sorts where people can basically, you can play the game with either a VR headset or you can play on desktop mode. But I didn't know that at first, and I first learned about the platform on YouTube through like a couple documentary videos exploring like the darker side of the platform. So I didn't have the very best first impressions of the platform before joining it, but nevertheless, I was still curious to try it out and see what people were interested in. And plus, my Oculus Quest 2 at this point had been collecting dust because I hadn't used it. And I bought it like in the beginning of 2021, and I had it basically just sitting around for over a year without using it much, so I thought I'd put it to good use essentially. But yeah, going into VRChat for the first time, I didn't know much about it beyond it being a social platform, and I thought that people could only play it using VR headsets. I didn't know about the desktop mode, essentially. For the first 2 weeks I was on the platform, I interacted mostly with other Americans, and I have to say that that was probably the worst part of my time on VRChat, like just those first 2 weeks, because a lot of the Americans I've encountered on the platform are, I don't know if it's okay to use this term, but basically the best way I could describe them were normies, basically. People who are likely only playing the platform just because the Quest 2 is so accessible to people who wouldn't normally pick up a VR headset. So the people I encountered on there were not exactly the kind of people I want to be around, essentially. But nevertheless, I was still interested in it because it just felt so nice to get my mind in what felt like my because it's virtual reality, so it feels like you're basically existing outside of the reality, like inside this virtual plane. So it just felt nice, I guess, to get out of real life for a little bit. I don't really have any friends in real life, per se. I mean, like, I don't really count any of the people I work with as friends, even though I talk with them. But yeah, I don't really have any friends in real life. So either way, I still took what I could get, essentially, from this platform. But towards the end of March last year, like particularly I think it was on the 29th or the 28th, I gradually started to shift more towards interacting with foreigners, essentially, because the thing is, before VRChat, I didn't really have any. I never really been in a sort of space where I can actually talk to and chat with people from other countries. Like I've interacted with people from other countries before, obviously, like especially like through Facebook when I was in a relationship with somebody from the Philippines at the time, in 2017. I met and talked to a lot of people from the Philippines there, like when that was going on. But otherwise, I haven't had much interaction with foreigners in my life, and VRChat was where that all changed essentially. On the 29th of March, somewhere around there, I was at the Midnight Rooftop World, and I met someone who would become a very close friend to me, at least for a couple weeks. And this woman was from South Korea, and she was quite fluent in English, so we were able to like have simple conversations in English. Like especially if I texted her, she could easily translate on Google Translate, so we can talk easily through there. But either way, she was fluent enough in English that she could understand me, and we were able to interact in a meaningful sort of way on VRChat and become close friends, basically. Like we hung out every day for like I think it was a couple weeks, basically. And it was through interacting with this friend that I actually got the idea suddenly on the 31st of March, so about 2 days after I met her. I suddenly got the idea to start learning Korean. So this is where the whole language learning thing kind of comes into place, because that also was a significant change that would affect, that also kind of kept me from making videos. Language learning is a very productive skill, especially if you plan on interacting with a lot of foreigners. And this isn't the first time I've attempted to learn a second language, but this is the first time I've actually made put effort into learning a second language, because when I was in high school, I for a couple of years learned American Sign Language, but none of that really stuck because I was only doing it just for the requirement to get into a 4-year university. So the only thing I can remember about ASL to this day is just how to, sign the alphabet, and I can do that if you want me to in a future video or something. But yeah, all it took was a little interaction with one person from that country, and suddenly I was interested in learning their language, and I downloaded an app to get started on the whole process. And it started in an afternoon, when I'm supposed to be sleeping, because I work night shift, and that hasn't changed at all since we last talked. Actually, my work schedule has been exactly the same this past year, and it's not going to change anytime soon. But it was noon, and I was supposed to be going to sleep, but instead I downloaded an app to start learning Korean. And of course, later on, as I got more and more into the interest of learning languages, I would come to learn that this particular language learning app that I got was shit. It's honestly not a good. I don't recommend this app at all for learning. But you see, basically, it teaches you the language based on different these random categories, and they would have vocab words essentially for you to learn each category, and that's it. There's no sentences, no context. There's no, it's not a meaningful way to learn a language at all. It's not effective in any way whatsoever. It's not going to help you with pronunciation. It's not going to help you actually stick with anything unless you you might learn the words, but you're not going to be able to connect them together in a sentence at all. So it's pretty much useless, entirely useless for learning a language. I don't recommend this particular app. But for what it's worth, I did kind of learn Hangul, which is basically the Korean alphabet. That's pretty much all the, many East Asian languages, Korean is it's a character-based language. So you have to learn how to pronounce all these different characters essentially, and learn what to put them together, make words, just like an English alphabet. But the thing is, there's only really around 17 or so unique characters that you have to learn. There's not a lot. It's actually it seems smaller than I think it's even smaller than the English alphabet, to be honest. But yeah, that makes it seem a little easier to learn, I guess. But we'll get more into that later, because the thing is, I would not stick to this for very long. Because I learned a couple categories, greetings and colors. That's it. That's all I learned. Basically, it was about 20 Korean words basically, and I don't think, and they haven't, and not much of them stuck to this very day, because I didn't stick to learning language for long. I'd say for the first couple weeks of April or so. Because after a certain point, my friends basically disappeared. We never spoke again on Discord. We never met again on VRChat. She basically just stopped playing VRChat entirely, I guess. I don't know what happened, and I didn't want to bother her after that, because it is what it is. Sometimes friendships don't last long, but it was still a very meaningful friendship for however long it lasts, and I hope to maybe speak to that person again someday. Who knows? But moving on, as I started to learn Korean for a few days, I thought to myself, what if I could learn 2 languages at once? So I started doing some research on the process, and if it's, I started to do some research and see if it's possible for, someone to learn 2 languages. And it turns out it is. It's actually recommended, and actually saves you time. It's very possible to, but you gotta be, it just really depends on which one's more important to you, which one you want to dedicate more time to. Because the human brain is actually pretty capable of memorizing more than one thing at once. There's a reason why we can do more than one, class in high school or college or whatever at a time. So that means you could learn more than one language at a time. And the thing is, actually, back in 2018, I did make a single, a very short, 1-2 day attempt at learning Japanese, because. And the country of Japan has had a very significant cultural impact on video games, as well as, anime, obviously. But the thing is, I'm not much of an anime watcher myself. I haven't really, the only anime I've watched per se in my life is basically the one based off Kirby from Nintendo. That's the only anime I've actually watched, I guess you could say, religiously, but not really, because I had growing up in America, I had basically my only option as a kid was 4Kids, and that's not. They basically aired one episode of Kirby on Saturday mornings, and that was it. Like that was it. That was the only time I ever got to watch Kirby, and I had a DVD with like 7 episodes on it, but otherwise I had no way of watching the Kirby episodes growing up. So I didn't have much, you know, exposure to anime as a kid, and I haven't had much as an adult either because it's just one of those things where where I always say I'll start watching it eventually, but not right now. Just one of those kinds of things you keep on putting off. But either way, I have a vested interest in Japanese culture, so I thought, oh, I'll learn Japanese and Korean at the same time. But the Korean part did not last very long, and with learning Japanese, that was when Duolingo came in, basically. And I've used Duolingo continuously for the past... so April 27th is when I started using Duolingo for the first time since 2018. And even then, by then, I had already been learning Japanese for a few weeks, and I had basically... By then, I had memorized hiragana, but I hadn't quite learned katakana yet, and that's where Duolingo came in. It basically got me up to speed on katakana. So basically, at this point, I can read hiragana and katakana characters. It's just learning the words and sentences and stuff like that. And like I can also kind of understand the grammar of Japanese, the Japanese sentences too. So it's just a meaning of at this point, it's just learning the words and how and more about how they flow together, basically, in sentences. So I'm making progress over time with Japanese, but not as much as another language, which we'll get into real soon. But yeah, long before I was using Duolingo, I was using a different app. It's well, first it was the same shitty app that I was using for Korean, basically. But for what it's worth, I used it to memorize hiragana, and it helped me get started on that. But then on April 8th, I started using a different app, which I still use this very day, and one of the apps I would actually recommend for learning languages, and that is Pimsleur. And this app immediately got me started speaking Japanese, and it's helped me probably more than any other app I've used at this point. I haven't used Duolingo much for Japanese, but that at least got me memorized with katakana and whatnot. But yeah, so Pimsleur and Duolingo together are apps I can recommend for learning languages. Like, just do the two apps together, not separately. Duolingo can teach you to read the language, whereas Pimsleur will get you speaking the language. So I think that's a good combination, basically, to get started. But I can't say for sure that these two apps will get you at fluency level, per se. And so when I say I jumped into language learning, I really jumped into language learning. Like, I was literally doing this from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep on my days off, and I'd have VRChat running in the background on my PC, while at the same time, studying languages of sorts, and I'd practice with native people I meet online. But yeah, once I stopped speaking to my friend from South Korea, I didn't really have any incentive to learn language after that because I didn't have any friends from the country. So, it's really, to be honest, it helps if I have friends from that country to learn the language, because it gives me more incentive, more motivation to do so, because I want to be able to speak to my friends in their native languages instead of English all the time. So it just seems more convenient for my friends, basically. And so that was it. By the end of April, I was basically using Duolingo and Pimsleur to learn Japanese, and talking to people from Japan whenever I could on VRChat. And I still to this day have some friends from that country that I speak to on VRChat every now and then. And also, as a side note, but due to this language learning, this intense focus on language learning and VRChat, I stopped doing the things I would normally do outside of work, and that was watching YouTube videos and collecting video game consoles and games, essentially. I didn't completely abstain from doing those things, but I basically my frequency significantly went down. From the time I played VRChat, I didn't go to the game stores for an entire month. And when I finally did, on April 19th, I got the 3DO console. Yeah. So for those who don't know, the 3DO was the first 5th generation console, and it was a significant failure because of its high price point of $699 in 1993. So, yeah, and it's basically... it competed with the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. It did not stand a chance, despite having like incredible top-notch graphics. But the thing is, when a console is the first of its generation, it's usually ahead of its time, so that that falters its success at that point. You know, because it has to suffer from a very high price point, because it has the innovative technology that other consoles don't have, so people can't buy it, and then it fails. And essentially all it does is just pave the way for future consoles of the new generation to actually succeed, because the technology becomes more affordable. And of course I bought other things besides the 3DO console that day, but aside from that, yeah, I didn't do any more game collecting until, like, for 3 months after that, until the middle of July. But it's also worth knowing that throughout the month of April, there was a significant change to my life in VRChat, essentially. A change that would basically be permanent, because throughout the month of April, I started to meet a lot of people, and I mean a lot, people from China, essentially. See, the thing is, VRChat has a very large presence in China, because there's a lot of people who are young adults who just graduate high school and going to university, and they want to interact with foreigners to improve their English, because people in China are actually required to learn English as they get through primary, middle, and high school as a second language. But they don't get the chance to actually practice their English with foreigners until, like, they're actually able to play these, unless they play, like, these social platforms or actually go abroad. So there's a lot of people from China on VRChat, essentially, is all I'm trying to say here. And it was through these interactions that I actually made a lot of friends from China. In fact, actually, at this point, the vast majority of my friends on VRChat are Chinese. And that encompasses basically all my close friends that I have on VRChat to this very day. And so from that, you can probably guess where this is going, because obviously I had abandoned learning Korean, like, in the middle of April, and at this point I was learning just Japanese. But towards the end of May, I started learning Mandarin Chinese. I want to say like May 23rd or May 24th, but I was learning it exclusively on Duolingo at first, I think, or maybe it was on, I can't remember if I started learning it on Duolingo or on a Pimsleur, because it's kind of hard to say, honestly. But through Duolingo, I've actually learned to read a lot of characters, like specifically from HSK 1 and HSK 2, and even some from HSK level 3, essentially. And I also learned a lot of sentences I can say on through Pimsleur and Duolingo itself, actually. So through learning Mandarin Chinese and learning Japanese and having these very close friends on VRChat, it just brought a whole, I don't know, like, it just improved my life significantly. Like, well, at the same time, you could say it's not good for me to be spending so much time on this social platform, because it's not healthy for anyone to spend too much time online. But I have to say that I really do think that this change has been for the better for my life, essentially. Like, I felt, before I played VRChat last year, I felt like I was completely alone, essentially. Like, I had no friends whatsoever in real life. And it's still kind of true to a certain extent. But with these close friends I now have, I actually have ambitions of traveling the world and meeting these people in real life. And also, speaking of meaningful connections, I actually met someone on the 9th of June last year online. And the first interaction we had was kind of not favorable, I should say. And we didn't speak to each other for weeks after that. But nevertheless, this person was interested in hanging out with me because of my, I guess because the name Gamer is in my name and they like to play video games, so we just kind of had that connection through there, basically. When I realized that we might actually have a connection as friends, I added her on VRChat, and we started chatting like every day, basically, like I did with all my other close friends. But there was something different, actually. As we chatted with each other more, we actually became intimately close, essentially. We talked about our common interests and our similar negative experiences that we had recently with dating, specifically. And you can probably guess where this is going, but basically, on the 3rd of July, around 11:30 p.m., I asked this person to be my girlfriend. And still to this very day, we are in a committed relationship. We have been dating for, it's going to be 8 months tomorrow, or today as I'm posting this video. I'm not sure, one of the two. March 3rd, specifically, is going to be our 8th month anniversary. And this person's name on YouTube is Misai. And she's actually also in my Discord as well. But she doesn't post a lot. She doesn't post any content on YouTube per se. I I guess I should mention like those live streams I did in July when I was playing Xenoblade Chronicles X. I didn't intend to stream them publicly. I was just streaming them so that she could watch because she likes to watch me play video games. Uh, but I will say Misai is Chinese, and she loves to play video games, and that's basically what brings us together, essentially. And ever since the day, or maybe it was the day after, I'm not sure, like the day that we started dating, we've been having Discord video calls like every day from the second we wake up to actually basically. If I didn't have my job, we would be video chatting literally 24 hours a day, basically, because anytime I'm not at work, we are basically video chatting together because she works from home, so for the most part. So in a roundabout sort of way, it kind of feels like we're already living together, basically. But yeah, we aren't quite that far quite yet. We're still long distance and whatnot due to being halfway across the world from each other, but it's still been a very meaningful and committed relationship, basically, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Anyways, I'll move on to the next topic because this is just a comeback video, so I'm only gonna do like an overview of things that have happened the past year, and I can go into more in depth into any of these topics you want me to in future videos. But anyways, later in July, after I started dating Misai, I went to the game store finally again for the first time in 3 months, and I picked up my Atari Jaguar. I don't have the Jaguar CD yet for obvious reasons. That thing is freaking expensive, even for game collecting standards. I also got my PlayStation Vita here too. None of these consoles I've tried yet to see if they're working or not. I should probably do that, but yeah, I just picked them up just for the sake of having them in the collection. I can test them out later. But then the very next month, things got kind of crazy, actually. I kind of sort of lost control of myself temporarily, and I got Atari 5200 finally, because I've been wanting that console like ever since I started collecting games and consoles in general, because I had seen the AVGN episode on it, and I was very curious to see what it looked like and how it handled in real life, basically. So I picked up that console, and I used a loan to buy it because it was so expensive on eBay. Because I wanted a full, complete in-box version. That's what I got, and it's the original 4-controller port, by the way. Not only that, but I also got the world's first video game console, which is the Magnavox Odyssey, and that was also a pretty penny, so... Yeah, I took out 2 loans to get those, and I'm still paying off the one for the Odyssey to this very day, because it was quite expensive. Going into the fall, I basically encouraged Misai to get a Nintendo Switch, and... So, yeah, she eventually did get a Nintendo Switch, and we played Zelda Breath of the Wild together, basically, like, all the way from start to end, completion. Like, obviously, it's not a multiplayer game, so we can't play it together, but basically what we did was we just played it separately, and we'd be right next to each other, like, and I'd be giving her advice if she gets stuck on something, or she even gave me advice sometimes on things that I didn't know about, things that she discovered on her own playing the game, basically. But I did not hold her hand much. Like, whenever she ran into something, I basically just kind of push her in the right direction, but at the same time, like, not, tell her what exactly needs to be done, basically. Like, I prefer people, like, because I understand the nature of Zelda Breath of the Wild is people need to kind of, figure things out on their own. That's the fun of the game, essentially. So, skipping straight to December, mind you, I'm playing VRChat and doing language learning all the way through all this, so that's why... There's a lot of gaps from here on out where not a lot happens. So this past winter has been kind of rough. I mean, kind of... I don't know how it compares to other winters. It's been kind of just typical Wisconsin winter, but we've had some pretty rough winter storms here and there, especially recently. But we also had one back in December, and on December 23rd, we had some exceptionally low temperatures, basically, like very, very low temperatures, like in the double digits below zero, basically. And at this point, it was around this time where my car stopped working. Like, basically, it froze, and it would not start. Like, at no point in those 5 days, like, it was December 23rd and in between and December 28th, basically, my car's battery stopped working, basically. But it was not only was the battery an issue, but there was also an issue with the alternator, because the alternator had never been replaced for as long as we've had the car. And we've had it since like 2005, basically. It's a 2004 model car, basically. So that alternator was about 20 years old. It had to be replaced, and so did the engine, or so did the battery. The battery was dead. So that was a very expensive repair on the car, and I was basically immobile for 5 days. I had to rely on coworkers to get to work. It was really bad. It was a pretty rough time, not gonna lie. So finally, on December 28th or 29th, I got my car repaired, and it seemed like the rest of the year was gonna be uneventful. It was only 4 days. It was only 3 days, like 2 or 3 days, right? So not much could possibly happen, right? On December 30th, I was actually eating, I think it was like some chicken or something like that. I can't remember if it was, I'm pretty sure it was like chicken nuggets or something. I don't know. It was something really delicious because I was really into it. I was chewing like really hard because that's what you do when you really enjoy food. And next thing I know, I bit with full force down on my tongue, on like the left side of my tongue. It was like the left side of my mouth. And it started like it was so bad. There was basically an open wound in my mouth, in my tongue, and it was pretty bad. Like it was gushing out blood like consistently, constantly, and it would not stop. I thought it would be as simple as just um, as simple as just blocking the blood, like you would with any other open wounds on your skin. But no, this is on your tongue. So the thing is, like, it's inside your mouth, so like it's not the same as blocking just a regular old wound on your hand or something like that. This is on your tongue, so it's not easy to keep the blood blocked because you have to hold it there. But at the same time, like the inside of your mouth is naturally, it's always filled with saliva, so it's always moist. So yeah, it was pretty difficult to get the blood to stop, and I did a couple times, but it always started bleeding again, and basically for quite like several hours I thought I was going to die because it would not stop bleeding. It kept on gushing out blood like over and over again, and it's inside my mouth, by the way. So basically what would happen was I would close my mouth and my mouth would fill up with blood, and then I have to spit it out, and then I close my mouth again and fill up again and again and again. It's basically just this vicious cycle that would not stop. I thought I was going to bleed out and die. Like I was literally panicking more than I probably ever have in my entire life. I mean, that's probably an exaggeration, I'm sure, but like still, it was pretty scary. And so scary that I drove myself to urgent care at the hospital. I refused to call 911 and take an ambulance to the hospital. I was not about to pay the gargantuan fee of taking an ambulance to a hospital. So I drove myself to my car with blood gushing out my mouth basically the entire time. And so I was driving with one hand, with one hand and trying to block the blood in my tongue with the other hand. And then I sat at the urgent care for like 30 minutes waiting to get to see a physician, only for them to tell me, like, or whoever the doctor is there, I don't care. And for whatever, well, I don't know about whatever reason. Basically, they told me that they can't do anything for me, just because the wound was too small in my tongue. But I was still gushing out. Well, not this time, but we'll get to that. At the time it had stopped bleeding because I tried my best to block it on the way to when I was driving to the hospital, and it did stop once I got there. But yeah, while I was there, it wasn't bleeding, so they told me it's not a big deal. They basically told me to gargle salt water, and or suck on ice or something like that. Like basically just those two things. That's all you can do for a bleeding tongue, essentially. Like especially the gargling salt water. Apparently that's what helps the most, as I would discover later. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But yeah, basically I went home that first time and it did not stop. The bleeding would not stop at all for hours. It continued and continued. And as more time passed, I was getting more and more panicked and thinking I was going to die. Essentially, I was terrified. I was really, really afraid. And Misa can attest to that because she watched me like just rocking back and forth in my seat, like panicking, thinking I was going to die. It was just not a good time. It's not fun to revisit that time at all whatsoever. So after a few hours, I made a second trip to the urgent care, and this time my tongue was bleeding at the urgent care, and once again they turned me away, doing absolutely nothing for me. I get that apparently what was happening to me was not serious at all, but come on, how am I supposed to know that I'm not going to bleed out and die when there's literally blood constantly coming out over and over and over again? Like, how could I possibly know that I wasn't going to die from this? Because the fact is blood was gushing out, so usually when that happens someone dies eventually because they lose too much blood. And I was losing a shit ton of blood. Like, I was bleeding out so, like, every time I had to spit out the blood, it was like always like a huge chunk of it. I was freaking out. So you can't tell me you don't have the salt water at the place, you know? They didn't even offer me at least they didn't even like offer to stop the bleeding like while I was there, basically, like, and just enough so I could go get the materials to do it myself. So basically after that I drove myself to the store with my mouth still full of blood, so I couldn't open my mouth to say anything while I was at the store. I had to buy the things I needed, like the salt and everything, because I don't have it here. I don't gargle salt water normally, so I don't have salt. And I don't dress my food with salt normally either, so I don't really have any reason to buy it, but I did. I went to the store, I got the stuff, and finally the bleeding stopped, and it took like several days for my tongue to heal itself, basically, to close the hole, essentially. So moving on to the next thing, this year has started off pretty uneventful for me for the most part. That is until the end of January. On January 30th, I made the sudden decision to buy a new PC. Now I'm talking a desktop PC. In fact, I'll show it to you right now. So this is my new gaming rig. This is Asus Republic of Gamers, and it's an RTX 3080 graphics card. 512 gigabytes SSD internal, and also in addition a 2 terabytes HDD internal, and the processor is an Intel Core i7. So, and also 16 gigabytes of RAM, as you can see there. But yeah, this is my new gaming PC basically, and I got this on the 30th of January. And I kind of started to make like an unboxing video for it, but I didn't get very far. Well, I did the unboxing of the PC itself, and I showed what it looks like, without all this crap attached to it. But I was also going to open up my old PC, because I have this old desktop from like 2009, basically, and I thought about doing kind of opening up and see what it looks like inside compared to my new PC. So if you're interested, I can do that too. I can finish the unboxing video by showing the inside of this PC if you want. But yeah, it's up to y'all if you want to see it or not. Of course, there were other factors as to why I got the new PC, but basically the main reason is that my laptop was I just wanted a more powerful graphics card, and I was able to take the loan out to get this PC as well. So yeah, and this one's going to take a lot longer for me to pay off, obviously, because it was quite expensive. But the thing is, they just came out with the 40 series graphics cards, so that made the 30 series graphics cards cheaper, more affordable to get, despite the fact that they're still insanely powerful. So therefore, they can still last. They're still good for like a few years, basically. And also, you may have noticed that I actually got new glasses. Yeah, that's probably the first thing you notice in the videos. I got new glasses, and that's another thing. Around the same time I went to get my PC, I also got a appointment to see the eye doctor, because I had not been to the eye doctor for 6 years, or 7 years actually. I think it was April 2016. That was the last time I went to the eye doctor and got new glasses. So I've been stuck. I had the same prescription glasses for the past 7 years, and I finally got new ones, and these ones are a huge improvement because these block out blue light, which is good for me because I get a lot of blue light in my life because I spend pretty much my entire day staring at computer screens. So obviously blocking out blue light is very important for me, and also I'm a night shift person, so pretty much my whole day is filled with artificial light. So yeah, just all the more reason to get these new glasses, and they've been insanely helpful for me finally having them, basically, after all this time. So after getting the new PC, pretty much the only main development aside from the new glasses is I basically jumped into the world of emulation in the past couple weeks since I got this PC. It started with Dolphin, because you can play GameCube and Wii games on this emulator, and it's a pretty advanced emulator. Like, it's probably the best emulator I've ever had the experience of using. Because basically we can play GameCube and Wii games on our PC with HD resolution, 60 FPS on all games, with the right codes, essentially. It's basically the definitive way to play all these old games, and it's just one of the best things in the world. I can even I actually have the Wii U GameCube controller adapter hooked up directly to my PC through USB, and or is it? Yeah, it's like hooked up directly through my PC here, and I'm able to use just a plain old GameCube controller to play the GameCube games as well as the Wii games, as long as that permits, basically. And also, I also got this Dolphin uh, Wii motion sensor bar, basically, so I can use actual Wii remotes and actual GameCube controllers to play the games essentially on Dolphin. And I also have other emulators too. So after getting Dolphin, I also picked up some and looked into other emulators too, like Dezume, which is for DS. Basically, you can play DS games on your PC. I can't seem to get it to work with standard controllers, but I find that working with you can just use the mouse as the stylus, basically, and you can use the keyboard for controls, basically, because the DS didn't have analog controls, so I think that works fine with keyboard and mouse, honestly. There's also Project 64 for Nintendo 64 games. There's Zemu, which is actually for the original Xbox, so I actually played a few original Xbox games on my PC, which was Simpsons Hit Run, as well as the SpongeBob games as well. And finally, just recently the other day, I picked up a Visual Boy Advance, which allows you to play Game Boy Advance, and Game Boy Color games on your PC. So that's pretty helpful too. And I think it plays DS games too. I could be wrong though. I think it's just the Game Boy family. So with all this out of the way, what about content going forward? Well, basically, I want to focus on projects I haven't finished yet, like a Metroid Prime trilogy Let's Play. I still got 80, I think around 80 or so episodes or not 80, but like 70 or 60 episodes of that to edit down and finally post on YouTube. And those are already about a year and a half old, but still, whatever. I still got to post them anyways because I recorded them, so might as well. And there's also, I got finished the Zelda Skyward Sword HD blind Let's Play. So there's that too. People on my Discord were asking if I was going to do SpongeBob, the Cosmic Shake, which is a brand new SpongeBob game that just released a few weeks ago. I do have that game. I got the Xbox One version, the Switch version, and the PS4 version. I didn't know it at the time, but apparently there's a PC version. They just didn't do a physical release like they did with Rehydrate. So I'm not sure what's up with that. But I will eventually get to the Cosmic Shake. But the thing is, I still gotta get through all the other SpongeBob games I was planning to Let's Play as part of the SpongeBob Marathon. I haven't even done Rehydrate yet, basically. So if I do play Cosmic Shake anytime soon for the channel, it would be through a live stream. And I'm thinking of doing live streams to YouTube instead of Twitch. So maybe that's another venture we could go about doing in the coming weeks. Who knows? In fact, I might actually start doing content with Misai as well. In fact, actually, we were thinking of making videos on Bilibili. So I have a channel on Bilibili now. And if things go as planned, I'll be making content on there with Misai as well as my content here on YouTube. So there's a lot of possibilities opening up for the future. So we'll see where things go. But for now, this video is insanely long. I don't know. It's still probably gonna be insanely long after editing. But I want to get this out to you guys as soon as possible. So, but yeah, essentially, I'm coming back to making content. I don't know how to go about it, but basically, I just want to get this video and get your input on things before I move forward on anything else. So yeah, catch you guys later. Bye.